Do you think Ferrari will give Hamilton the car you need before the regulatory change of 2026? Or will this other chapter be in the long list of frustrations of Maranello? I read you in the comments. Lewis Hamilton came to Ferrari with a mixture of expectation, history, and pressure. It was not only a change of equipment, but a strategic, emotional, and media commitment. A world champion, Mercedes' absolute icon, joining the most emblematic team of Formula One. The promise was clear: return Ferrari to the top. However, what he found in his first months was an environment full of technical frustrations, slow decisions, and a car that simply does not live up to his ambition. The breakdown occurred after the Canada Grand Prix. There, with a sixth position that did not reflect the potential of the pilot or what is expected of a Ferrari, Hamilton broke the diplomatic silence that he had maintained until then. In front of the cameras, their statements were as raw as revealing. He literally said that there are things that he cannot say in public, that there are many internal decisions that he simply does not understand, and that while other teams visibly improve career, Ferrari seems to be stagnant at the same starting point. The tension is no longer hidden. It manifests itself in the tone, in the gestures, in the despair of someone who feels who is wasting time in a project aimless. The most significant thing is that Hamilton is not alone in this vision. From within the paddock, voices such as Nico Rosberg, former partner and rival, have confirmed that British's discontent is real and growing. Rosberg was blunt. Hamilton believed that with his arrival he could accelerate the progress of the team, which he could build on what was achieved at the close of 2024. But the reality was a slam in the face. The promised evolution did not arrive. The results, far from improving, have worsened in some aspects. And what is more worrying, the technical direction of the team seems to have clarity on how to solve the fundamental problems of the car. And here enters the technical dimension of drama. The SF25, the car with Ferrari competes this season, has a structural defect that is wearing all its possibilities. The biggest problem is in the rear suspension, a critical area in any modern Formula One car. Ferrari opted for a pull rod system, looking for a balance between lightness, aerodynamics, and efficiency in rapid curves. However, the implementation has been a disaster. The current design causes unstable behavior of the car, generates excessive wear of the flat background, and has made the height of the car more than allowed by regulation. It was precisely this characteristic that caused Hamilton disqualification in China due to excessive skirting wear. This failure is not less. A car with a poorly designed rear suspension not only loses traction, but becomes unpredictable in the braking and in the entrance to curve. For a pilot like Hamilton, who bases a good part of his style on precision on these phases, this is directly castrating. And the worst part is that these types of defects are not solved with minor adjustments or with simple aerodynamic updates. It requires structural redesign, geometry review, and many hours in simulator and wind tunnel. Something that, obviously, Ferrari has not been able to implement since the beginning of the season. This cluster of frustrations has resulted in what can only be interpreted as an ultimatum. Hamilton has said publicly that 2025 is already lost, that the car is not competitive, and that the real objective must be 2026, when the new technical regulations enter into force. But even that has an implicit warning. If Ferrari fails again, if he repeats the planning, design, and execution errors that have it today outside the fight for the championship, then they will not be able to retain it. And with that, they would lose much more than a pilot. They would lose their only guarantee of immediate greatness. Charles Leclerc is not just any pilot. It is Ferrari's banner for years, the emotional heir of the Tifosi, the man who has resisted internal storms, strategic disappointments, and cars that were not up to his talent. However, in 2025, Leclerc is in a field that had not triggered so far, the technical, emotional, and sports shadow of Lewis Hamilton. And the most shocking thing is not that he is experiencing it, is that he has publicly recognized him. In a gesture that few champions would be willing to make, Leclerc has admitted that there is an area in which Hamilton takes advantage. It refers to one of the most technical and difficult abilities to dominate in Formula One modern, the art of managing the car in the braking and curve entrance phases. Specifically, Leclerc highlights how Hamilton dominates the so-called lift and coast, releasing the accelerator and modulating the brake so precise that it manages to keep a faster minimum speed in curve. That is, while others raise their foot or stop stronger, Hamilton manages to keep the car more stable, faster, and above all, more effective in the most critical sections of the layout. This recognition is important for several reasons. First, because it comes from a pilot who is also extremely technical. Leclerc is not an impulsive corridor, but an obsessed calculator with telemetry and the improvement of its piloting. Second, because it reflects a level of self-awareness and humility that we rarely see in the world of F1, where admitting weakness can be perceived as a threat to status. And third, because it marks the beginning of an internal dynamic that can deeply change the hierarchy within Ferrari. Leclerc, on the other hand, has shown signs of discomfort. Beyond the verbal gesture of admiration, their recent performances have suggested a pilot who tries to maintain control in a growing pressure. The small differences in classification feel as stabs. Comments on car stability, tires, and wear seem more a justification than a technical diagnosis. And although it is still fast, the weight of having Hamilton as a daily reference is changing the competitive environment he knew. But this is not just a matter of times per return. In Ferrari, internal policy matters. Hamilton's figure not only influences the track, it also conditions decision-making, technical direction, and pressure on engineers. If previously Leclerc was the unique development lighthouse, there is now a stronger, more influential voice, with an experience than few in Maranello can question. The British not only demands a more competitive car, it also establishes communication standards, technical feedback, and preparation that are forcing the team to reformulate their processes. Mutual respect between both pilots remains intact, at least in the superficial. But we cannot ignore that we are seeing the beginning of a silent, deep, strategic competition. One in which not only is fighting for points but for the soul of the team. Leclerc has opened the door, recognizing Hamilton's superiority in a technical area. What remains to be seen is whether that confession will use as an impulse to reinvent yourself, or if it will be the beginning of a disadvantage that will accompany it throughout the era that is coming. What Lewis Hamilton has done is not just talking. It is sending a message calculated to the Ferrari power center. A message that, if ignored, can lead to a breakdown as historical as its arrival. The 7-time world champion has put a deadline, and that date is not subject to the goodwill of the team. It is subject to the results, to the technique, to the concrete evidence that Ferrari will transform, or will be left behind. That message is summarized in a concept: 2026. It is the year that everything can change. Formula One will introduce a new technical regulation that will redefine the cars, modify the engines, and offer a kind of competitive reset. For Hamilton, this represents the last great opportunity of his career to return to the top with a new, clean car, designed from scratch. But that future cannot be another empty promise. It cannot depend on improvisation or systematic error. And therefore, the ultimatum is not symbolic. It is a roadmap with real consequences. What is at stake for Ferrari is much more than a season. It is your technical credibility, your ability to attract and retain talent, your competitive future. If in 2026 they fail again, whether they deliver another unstable car, poorly balanced or technically poorly deficient, will not only lose Hamilton. They will lose the opportunity to resurface with a figure that, even today, continues to move the needle in terms of sponsors, reputation, and positive media pressure. Hamilton has said it directly: he will not tolerate another start of the season like the 2025. He wants guarantees. He wants to see the 2026 car development from now on. He wants to be involved in the design of the car, in the choice of technical philosophy, in aerodynamic architecture, in previous simulation. This is not a whim. It is accumulated experience. It is the reflection of who knows exactly what is needed to build a champion car. Silverstone will be the first thermometer. There, Ferrari plans to introduce the greatest update of the SF25 to date. But not even that will be enough if it is not accompanied by a strategic plan by 2026. Engineers must already be working on new regulations, exploring radical concepts, learning from the failure of the current rear suspension, and above all, listening. Because if Hamilton has made something clear, he is willing to lead, but not to push alone. And if the team does not respond, 2026 will not be the year of its resurgence. It will be the year Hamilton decides that it has been enough. And for a team that has not won a title since 2007, losing the most winning pilot of all time for internal incompetence, it would be too heavy sentence even for a giant like Ferrari. Ferrari is not facing a technical challenge. It is a moment of truth. One of those that separate the shields that are transformed from those that are trapped in the nostalgia of their own shield. The arrival of Lewis Hamilton promised to be a redemption chapter, an act of mutual trust between a track legend and a historical team. But as the 2025 season progresses, that alliance begins to fracture under the weight of breeding expectations, of repeated errors, and a car that is not up to the ambition they both shared. This is not just the story of a frustrated pilot. It is the story of a warning. Hamilton has put the bar. He said it clearly: he is not willing to be part of another failed cycle. He will not repeat the patience he showed in Mercedes when design errors moved him away from the podium year after year. Because now, his legacy does not depend only on adding titles, but on how his career closes. And if Ferrari does not offer the necessary tools, he will not hesitate to leave this chapter behind with the same coldness with which he left Brackley. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, has already felt the impact. Not only in time comparisons, but in something deeper: the transfer of technical leadership within the team. His public admission to the area where Hamilton surpasses him not only honesty evidence. It also shows that, within Ferrari, internal references are changing. And that, in a structure as traditional as Maranello, has implications that go far beyond the garage. Formula One lives a time of transition. The regulations of 2026 promise to change the rules of the game, offer a new opportunity to all teams. But only those who begin to prepare from now on with vision, boldness, and real leadership will be in a position to take advantage of that window. Ferrari has one of the best pilots in history willing to be part of that revolution. Time ends. And although there is still room to save the relationship, the regressive account has already begun. Hamilton has been patient. It has been loyal. He has put his reputation at play by joining a risky project. But even legends have a limit. And that limit is marked by a number: 2026. So the question is inevitable: Ferrari will understand it before it's too late? Or are we witnessing the beginning of a break that, like so many others in the history of this sport, could be avoided, but did not want to avoid?